Hello. I know that I am 10 minutes early, but I'm going to be dog sitting this weekend. I just got a text that the lady is on her way. So I decided to come on out so that I wouldn't have to cut this off short. And this will likely be part one because I think that there are more signs that you're called to the ministry of deliverance, but these are 15 of those signs. I had actually thoughts of other signs as I was. About to go live or what have you. And I literally just got this text on 1 minute ago. And that's why I decided to go ahead and hit the live button. So I pray that you guys have had an amazing day. And because I don't have a lot of time, she may be here in 30 minutes. She may be here in an hour. I'm not sure how far she is away from me. I'm going to try to get through this information as fast as possible. So, with that being said, I'm going to be talking about 15 signs that you're called to the ministry of deliverance. And before I go into this, let me tell you what motivated me, what provoked me to want to talk about this. I had a moment with God today that was just absolutely beautiful. So if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see a dream I talked about that I had last night or pretty much this morning because I went to bed this morning. And after I posted that, the Lord reminded me of another dream and he showed me that they were connected. He reminded me of another dream that I had and he showed me that they were connected. And literally, guys, I actually began to weep. I began to weep because it was something, it blessed my heart so much and it just showed me the goodness of God. So the first dream that I had was some years ago. I've literally shared it multiple times on my platform. I've shared it in my books, but I'm gonna rehearse it again for those of you who may have never heard that dream because I do know that this channel has quite a bit of new followers. But I had a dream some years ago, and I think this was like 2009 when I had this dream. I had a dream that I was in England somewhere, I think it was. It was somewhere I just seen rolling hills, but for whatever reason, I believe I was in England. I think I was in England somewhere. And I was there was this road that I was on. And on this road it was rolling hills on, it was just like this road in the middle of nowhere and all this beautiful pastures, all this beautiful land around us, but it was just a road. And me and these ladies were standing on the road. Many of you probably remember this dream. Me and these ladies were standing on the road. And I was standing there and I was in front of them talking to them. It was three of them in front of me. And I think we had cell phones in our hands. So we were talking and we were laughing. And all of a sudden, I saw the women, they kind of looked past me and then I saw them lower their heads. And, every last one of them, I saw them lower their heads. And I'm trying to figure out why they lowered their head. And so I turned around and I saw this dark skinned guy wearing sunglasses approaching us. And the guy got up on us or what have you. And the first thing that he did was he walked up to one of the women. So I'm confused. I'm looking at the guy, I'm looking at the women. He walked up to one of the women and he ripped, and I believe it was her cell phone out of her hand. He took it out of her hand and she just let it go. He walked up to the other woman and he took her cell phone, and they got their heads down, they're not resisting or what have you, they just got their heads down. He just took their cell phones out of their hands. So I'm just sitting here looking like, I'm not saying anything, but I'm in awe. I'm in shock. I'm like, y'all just gonna sit here and let this dude take your cell phone. And so what ended up happening was he turned around to me and he tried to take my cell phone, where he actually took my cell phone out of my hand. And when he took my cell phone out of my hand, I got aggravated and I snatched it back from him. And I said to him, I said, you're going to just you can't take my cell phone or whatever. I don't remember what, but I was yelling at him about what he'd done. And I could tell in the dream he was relatively shocked because he kind of raised his eyebrows like, he was relatively shocked that I was actually fighting him back. So consequently, what ended up happening was, um, I took my cell phone. I said, I'm calling the cops. and he said it in the scariest, but most calm, relaxed way. Oh, so you're going to call the cops on me? And I was like, yeah. And I remember him shaking his head in a threatening way. He was like, so I called the police. And I told the police what had happened. And the women in front of me, they're looking a little shocked or what have you. So the dream kind of fast forwards to, we're still on the side of the road, but it's like we're kind of down the road just a little bit. I can see him and the cops are standing near him. And the cops are saying to him, they're talking to him or what have you. And they gave him these court papers for a court date that he had. They gave him his court papers for a court date, but they didn't arrest him. And I remember being terrified in the dream because they didn't arrest him. I was upset in the dream because they didn't arrest him. I have to stop and say this, guys. Like and share. Make sure you like and make sure you share this video. Make sure you like and make sure you share this video. We're calling them out the cave now. Like and share, because there's some of you still that just sitting there looking at me. I'm talking to you. Be sure to like and share. All right. So, hey, Apostle Aubrey, how are you? Love you, man of God. Love you, man of God. So, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the women and I'm trying to figure out why they just let this man take this, the cell phone out of their hands. When he took it out of my hand, I took it back from him and I confronted him and I was going off, call the police again. It fast forwards, we're down the road. And while we're down the road, I'm on the side of the street and I happened to look and I saw the cops talking to the man. They give him court papers. I'm frustrated because they didn't arrest him, but they gave him court papers where he would have to address that or what have you. So long story short, the cops leave. I see them get in their car and they leave or what have you. And after they left, the guy started walking toward me. And so I went on the run. And this is a dream. In the dream, I was running and everybody was betraying me. Like I was going to these different people's houses and stuff like that. And remember, again, in the dream, we're like in England. We're surrounded by these green pastures or what have you. But I'm going to all these people's houses and give me a second. All right, we're going to all these people's houses and I'm going to all these people's houses and they would kind of let me come in and what have you. And they supported me. But then whenever they would find out that this guy was on the way, they would turn around and they would point me out. They would expose me to the guy or what have you. So in the dream, I was on the run. And that was it. I woke up from that dream. And this dream took place in 2009. And when I woke up from that dream, God started giving me an understanding of the dream. And I think this is the second book I ever wrote, which was The Spirit of Heaviness and All Its Cousins. I didn't really have an understanding of deliverance or what have you, but I just wanted to talk about that dream in that particular book. But one of the things that God showed me was that with him taking their cell phones, it represented him taking their voices away. And again, these were three women that were standing in front of me, and we were on a road kind of isolated. And what happened was he took my voice away. He took my phone away, but I took mine back. And once I took mine back, it was surprising to him or what have you. And I called the cops. The cops didn't arrest him at that time. They didn't bind him at that time, but he was going to answer for those crimes. So last night I had another dream, and this is 13 years later. I ended up having a dream, and in this particular dream, I was in the custody of this really, really dark man, had some really coarse hair. I was in his custody, and I was terrified of him. I was really terrified of him. And he was just, he had like people working with him, and it was like me and it was other people. I remember seeing somebody else I knew there, but we were like in his custody. And he was ruling over us with this strong arm. So long story short, in the dream, he felt like he had enough fear in me to send me out to do some type of task or what have you. So he sent me into the marketplace. So I went into the marketplace in the dream. I went into this area, what have you. And when I go over there, first thing I do is I go on the run. I'm not going back or what have you. I'm going to call the cops on this dude. So in the dream, I go into what I think was a bank. I'm not sure if it was a bank, but I go into this place and I start telling the teller what had happened. And I was like, hey, could you call the cops? This guy, he's been holding us or what have you. And he's going to come looking for me. Could you call the cops? And I don't know if she believed me at first, but I ran behind her counter and I dug down. I hid because I saw him coming. So he came into the building and he was asking her if I was there, and she was lying. She said I wasn't there or what have you. So she ends up calling the cops. And I don't remember every detail of the dream, but what I remember was that she calls the cops. The cops come out, and somehow it fast forwards him outside. I see him in chains. I see him in handcuffs. He's been arrested. And that's a deliverance dream. But I see him in chains. He's arrested. And I'm standing there because I want him to see me. So he's looking at me as he's going to jail or what have you. So I woke up for that dream. Obviously, I went into prayer with the binding and everything. But the Lord started telling me, he said that dream is tied to the dream back then. Because remember, in the dream in 2009, he wasn't bound. And this was a different guy, but they were both, for whatever reason, both of them were dark. Um, in the dream in 2009, he had on sunglasses. And this is what God has reminded me of now. Thank you, Dion. God bless you. He had on sunglasses. In this particular dream, he didn't have on sunglasses. That represents exposure, revelation, or what have you. So in this particular dream, he's bound. In this particular dream, um, I go out on the run. And one of the things I said on my Facebook page was that sometimes you have to get free first before you can free, for example, your family, because a lot of times we get caught up in wanting to set our family free. We get caught up in wanting to do it, and we become really passionate and frustrated. But I can tell you from my own self, from my own testimony, from my own journey, I had to get my freedom first. Because I went through that journey of trying to pull them into church. I went through that journey of trying to convince them to come to church. I went through that journey of getting frustrated with them. I went through that journey of having a bunch of theological arguments with them when I was a babe. But then as I began to mature, I learned that I was, first and foremost, that was control on my part. Secondly, I was trying to bring them into church when they didn't want it. I had to wait for God to start to draw their hearts. And the way that God was going to draw their hearts, I remember what God said to me at one time, because my family, we're from Mississippi. We heard religion all of our lives. And God said, what he said to me one time was that when, in reference to my mom, she can no longer hear because religion will clog up the ear. So it all sounds the same. So sometimes when a person is religious, they have to see. They have to see the signs, the miracles, and the wonders. They have to see something they've never seen before. And that's what causes them to open their hearts to the revelation. So, with that being said, I got to move fast. I'm going to give you 15 signs that you are called to the ministry of deliverance. 15 signs that you're called to the ministry of deliverance. And this is not a one size fits all. This is not me saying that if you don't do none of this, because some of these things you may have to grow into. Some of these things you may not be doing yet. But these are signs that you will start to see that you may be called to the ministry of deliverance. The first one is you have dreams of you setting people free. You have dreams of you setting people free, which brings to number 2. I don't know why I did these. You have dreams of people being taken into captivity, people in captivity. So 1 and 2, we can kind of marry those together. You have dreams of people being in captivity. You have dreams of setting people free. In those dreams, you are a lot of times frustrated with what the things that are going around, what people have normalized, what people seem to be okay with, you're not okay with. And so again, in the first dream, the guy was taking these ladies' phones, and I wasn't okay with it. I was frustrated at the fact that they were watching him. They were just standing there letting him take their phones. And so he took mine. And again, that represented the voice, and I took mine back. So number 2, again, you have dreams of people being taken into captivity. Number 1 was you have dreams of you setting people free. You setting people free. If you believe you're called into ministry, not even that, it's always good to write your dreams down, because your dreams in many cases will give you an indication as to who you are. Number 3, you root for the underdog. You root for the underdog. Never in my whole wide life have I ever wanted to roll with the popular clique. If they were mean girls, I have never in my whole wide life, and I've gotten the invitations or what have you. As a matter of fact, I remember hanging with some girls when I was in the world. I was hanging with these girls, and I didn't realize that they had a mean clique nature to them. And I was accused of, I remember the words they used, of bringing strays. Because, we used to hang out, we would party, we would club, and what have you, and we worked together. So, I would end up having a conversation with somebody, and I'm like, oh, she's really cool. And I'd be like, we hang out on Friday nights, we hang out on, Thursday nights and Saturday nights, we would hang out. And I'm like, we typically go to such and such's house on Thursday night. On Saturday, we typically go to Thursday and Friday. We go to the club called the V, what have you. And I would invite them out, and then I would tell my other friends, I'm like, yeah, such and such, and they would get mad at me. They would get mad at me, and I would get upset with them, and I would be relatively confrontational, like, what's the problem? I don't get it. I don't understand. Because for me, I didn't understand the whole concept of, If somebody was nice and they wanted to hang with us, what was the problem? If they wanted to go out with us, what was the problem? I never understood that. So you root for the underdog, whereas other people can sit back and say, well, they need to get a backbone, they need to do this, they need to do that. You're more prone to holding the other people accountable. You're more prone to holding other people accountable. So you root for the underdog. Number 4, I will say this, and this one is going to say a little, but you're a deep thinker. You think a little bit deeper into things. You're not somebody that skims the surface of something. You're not somebody that just wants, surface level revelation. Whenever you are called to the ministry of deliverance, you are a ruminator. You're going to chew things a little bit more. God has given you bigger teeth in the realm of the spirit so that you can chew things up a little bit more so you can extract revelation, because things, the war is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and the rulers of this dark world and spiritual wickedness in high places. And so for you, it's a little bit deeper than that. For other people, it's just, oh, she got mad and she left that church, for example. But for you, it's a little bit deeper than that. And so you may talk to her, you may go a little bit deeper, or what have you. And it's not even just situations like that. If somebody, let's say, for example, kills, let's say when somebody's son dies, for example, I heard this with Regina King or what have you. When I started seeing things like that, my thoughts go a little bit deeper than, oh, he committed suicide. My thoughts go a little bit deeper. My thoughts will typically go to, was this the work of a spirit spouse? Because spirit spouses get involved in, what have you. Is this the work? What was this? What was this about? Were they involved in something that they shouldn't have been involved in? So you're going to be a deeper thinker than most people. You're going to look into things a little bit deeper. And if you're not careful, this is why, if you happen to be one of those people, you need to make sure that you're connected to the church and that you're reading your Bible every single day, that you're prayerful. You need to make sure that you have godly relationships, because it's easy for you to go into false doctrine. I've seen people that may be called to the ministry of deliverance. They can get involved in false doctrine. They can get involved in things like, did you see the eye on the dollar bill? See if you fold it up or what have you. They go into stuff like that. So you are a deep thinker. Forgive me for moving fast, guys. Like I said, I'm going to be dog sitting and I need the saints to pray for me. I haven't dog sit in a while. I'm going to be dog sitting for the next few days. And she just texted me and said she's on her way. She texted me and said she's on her way. Number 5, your level of consecration makes people think that you're religious or you're doing too much. Your level of consecration. This is something I wanted to deal with more in depth, but I don't have the time to, because one of the things that I'm passionate about is seeing unity in the church. That's one of the things I'm passionate about. I'm not against the prosperity ministry. I'm not against the healing ministry. I think that if we all came together, we would be powerful. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some prosperity ministries that are undermanned, but there are some genuine. I believe that we all have a, hopefully, I'm hoping that's not her out there. Give me a second. I got to look at my Ring camera. Go live thing. What is, okay, give me a second, guys. I do apologize. If that is her, I'll likely go back live. Okay, no, it's not. Milo. Okay, chill. All right. Praise the Lord. So, yeah, no, it's not her. It's not her yet. So I looked at my Ring camera. But I think I was saved in a prosperity church, or a church that's faith-based and it broke poverty off of my life. It broke the mindset of poverty, the spirit of poverty off of me. Even though they didn't believe that Christians could have demons, it was a good, godly church, and what have you. Now, and that was the church where I got deliverance from that mindset when poverty. And I'm gonna tell you, it had to offend the way that I thought. It scared me. My credit score at the time was in the low 500s. I used to buy stuff with no intention of paying for it. I was a mess of a person. That got broken off of me. And so now there are some prosperity ministries that, yes, they are all about money, but a lot of times it's not the case. I went to that church for 9 years and I still vouch for them. They are a godly establishment. And I think that God gives us, depending on our wiring, what you're called to, God is multidimensional. He lets you see a particular side of him. There's revelation that you get because of the wiring you have, and that wiring is what legalizes or qualifies you to see a certain side of God. And somebody else can have another side of God that you don't necessarily see, and consequently you'll think that they're heretic. But I don't believe that's the case. I believe that as a church, if we would have ever come together and unify, if we would can't come together in unity, the Bible says, come, let us reason together. If we would have ever come together in unity and sit it out and talk about it and then learn from each other and even chop up the things that are not right, I believe that we would be absolutely powerful. And so that's one of my passions, is to see that happen. But your level of consecration makes people think that you're religious. You may not listen to music that other people listen to. Other Christians may say, hey, ain't nothing wrong with me listening to this. There's nothing wrong with me doing this. There's nothing wrong. But for you, your level of consecration is a lot deeper. Right. They may think that you think you're this perfect. You may even be accused of being called religious. Now, there are people out there who are religious. I've had plenty of them to come up on my channel and try to tell me, Tiffany, you need to cover your head. Tiffany, you need to do this and what have you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your level of consecration. There are certain things that you don't involve yourself in. You can't involve yourself in that other Christians can and do involve themselves in. One, because you're a deeper thinker. And then two is because a lot of times God will give you another level of consecration. Number six, your circle is smaller than most people, or it can be relatively small. Your circle. Now, I'm not saying that you're in isolation or that you should be in isolation. One of the things that, and let me see if I have that in my notes. Okay, yeah, I do. Okay. Your circle is smaller. Thank you, Sister Natasha. God bless you. Probably this week. This week. But you, where was I? Your circle is small or what have you. And the reason that your circle is not so big is because you are a deep thinker. And most people are surface level thinkers. And there's nothing wrong with you being surface level if you're a surface level thinker. We're called to different heights. If you get my book, Microscribology, I'll talk about the different levels of a thinker in there. Will really bless your life. But you happen to be a deeper level thinker. And so for that, you're probably not going to like surface level conversations that much. You're more of an in-depth person. I think about some of the people that I talk to. What have you? A lot of times, I noticed a trend with the people I talk to is that they're typically leaders, and we're not skimming the surface too much. I mean, I'm not saying we're talking deep in metrons and stuff like that. No, but I'm just saying, like, talking about Tyrone and how he knocked you across your forehead and you left him. I'm not interested in that conversation. I'm genuinely not interested in that conversation. I'll just tell you, you need to get delivered. You need to walk away from that dude. It's not that deep, or what have you. But I'm not interested in hearing that again and again and again. So he left me last night, right, girl? Or what have you. I want to move forward from that conversation because it's not doing much of anything. But most people want to talk along those lines. Most people are out in the world doing their thing, and so consequently, they are surface level. Again, there's nothing wrong with being surface level. I'm talking about we are all called to different levels. Number 7, you study for yourself. What that means is you're not a person that goes and you just learn. You're not going to watch a bunch of YouTube videos, go to church, and just not study your Bible. You're going to typically come home and study because you want to understand. Like I said, you're a deeper thinker. You want to understand what you've been taught. You're not necessarily a person that's just going to say, well, this is what I was taught. It's less likely that you'll be found in a false religion. It's not to say that deliverance ministers can't be found in false religions. I'm saying it's less likely that you'll be found in a false religion because you are a studier of the word. You are a student of the word. Again, I got to move pretty fast. Number 8, you're an avid student. You're an avid student. That means that you buy books. Let's say, do I have that? I got some of the notes that could be tied together, but you're an avid student. You're a student of deliverance. You're always learning something. You're always learning something. Since I already got notes on that, I got to go ahead and move on. You are an avid student. You're not somebody that is going to get caught up watching TV and playing video games a whole lot because you are a consistent student. Thank you, Sister Deborah. God bless you. You are a consistent student and you're very mindful of where you place your heart and your time. You're very mindful of where you place your heart and your time. You're a servant. Number 9, you're a servant. You believe in serving. You believe in serving. And when I say that, I'm talking about you may serve at your church, or you may serve a leader, you're serving somewhere, or you're going to have a heart to serve. You may not be there yet because there are levels of maturity, but most of the time when you're called to deliverance, you're going to have a passion to serve because you have a passion to glean. And to glean, you understand that I have to walk close in order for me to glean. So you're going to be an avid servant. You're an avid student, number 8 was. And number 9 is where we are. You are a servant. You are a servant. Um, you're not going to just be background. Let's say, for example, if you're going to a church, you're not going to necessarily just be background. If you're going to a church, chances are you're going to have a level or a degree of honor for your leader. And with that degree of honor, you're going to want to walk a little bit closer. If they have some type of program or what have you, because you're a student, you're always wanting to learn something. You're always wanting to grow. And so consequently, you may find yourself serving in some capacity, one capacity or another. Number 10, you've always been interested in spirituality. You've always been interested. There's a curiosity that you've always had about spiritual things, which may have led some of you into witchcraft. I know when I was in the world, um, I remember my mom bought home a Ouija board. And we used to play with that thing until until my mom and dad started fighting like cats and dogs. And we started realizing that I just remember my brother, I was 15 years old at the time. And we just started realizing that since that Ouija board had came in our house, things went way left. I'm talking about it just went way left. So consequently, me and my brother had a conversation about it. And we had this lady, and I'll never forget this. I don't know what religion she was, but she was dressed almost like a nun, but she was wearing gray. She had a gray cover on her head, and my dad used to do taxes. She came over to our house for my dad to do her taxes. She was an older woman. And I remember my mom and dad, they went in the back room and they were fighting while the woman was in there. They were arguing like cats and dogs. And the Ouija board was sitting there on the table, and the lady was just staring at the Ouija board. And I will never forget um, apologizing and saying, I'm sorry, they've been fighting like that lately, or something I said to her. And I never forget what that woman, she said, that's because of that right there. And we looked and she was like, that Ouija board, that's why they're fighting. I'll never forget she said that. And me and my brother looked at each other. And that's when we started realizing that, they had been fighting like cats and dogs since my mom bought that Ouija board. And she bought it because she was curious. My mom has always been curious and what have you. She just didn't know. So me and my brother, we literally took that Ouija board outside after she left. We waited till my mom went to work. We plotted up, we were going to destroy the Ouija board. So we went outside and we were afraid of it because people were telling us all this stuff. So I remember at first, we thought we genuinely please counted to the fact that we were from Mississippi. We did not have internet, and we did not have deliverance ministers there that I know of. We just didn't know any better. Literally, we thought that you can throw the Bible on the Ouija board and it was going to catch on fire. I'll never forget that. We genuinely thought that. I was 15, my brother was 17, and we thought that if you throw the Bible on a Ouija board. So I remember we put the Ouija board out in the grass on the side of the yard because we wanted to get it away from the apartment a little bit so that the fire went. And we got the Bible and we stood from a distance and we were throwing the Bible at the Ouija board. We were throwing the Bible, and finally it landed on the Ouija board. Nothing happened. It landed on the Ouija board and we were surprised. Then we were afraid that it was going to spontaneously combust or what have you. So we were at a distance, wait, and it didn't, and nothing happened. So finally I got enough boldness up because my brother wouldn't go over there. I finally got enough boldness to go get the Bible off of the Ouija board. And eventually we picked up the Ouija board and I convinced my brother. He grabbed one end and I grabbed the other end, and we proceeded to try to rip it in half, and we threw it in the trash can. And we didn't tell my mom what we had done. We didn't tell her what we had done. But I'm saying that to say that people who are called to the ministry of deliverance typically have an interest in spirituality that can lead them down some dark paths. Whenever you don't know any better, it can lead you down some dark paths. I know that I used to love horoscopes. I used to read my horoscope religiously, what have you. And if I hadn't got saved, I probably would have went into some of these things that people have gone into. Thankfully, I know better. But you've always been interested in spirituality. Number 11, you binge watch deliverance videos. You binge watch deliverance videos. I would even say this, the names of deliverance ministers. You know the names. You're going to be an avid follower of deliverance ministers. Whenever God started pulling me into that area, that was the thing that happened, was that I started learning who's who in deliverance. I started gleaning. I started getting their books. I started studying or what have you. But you're going to binge watch their videos. You're going to buy the books. You will sit there. I remember when I moved to Conyers from Florida, that's when my interest heightened because I had been getting these prophetic words that God was moving me to Georgia. God put that on my heart. He told me, and then he was sending prophets after me to tell me that he's moving me to Florida, to Georgia. Finally, I obeyed. I came to Georgia, and immediately I went through a lot of warfare. But I remember when my house was in disarray, my apartment, because everything was moved in, but nothing was put up yet, and they hadn't set my internet up yet, and so I was doing what do you call that? Hotspot. I was watching via hotspot. I would connect my laptop via hotspot to my cell phone, and I was binge watching TB Joshua. And there's some people that, a lot of people are against TB Joshua, but I used to watch those videos. I used to binge watch them. I used to come back and I binge watched. I binge watched Apostle Ivory Hawkins. I binge watched Apostle Alexander Pagani. I binge watched Apostle John Eckhart. I binge watched Deliverance videos. I love to watch those videos or what have you. And I used to sit there and just watch it and be eating or what have you. But I was really interested in spirituality. But you binge watch Deliverance videos, you're going to be attracted to the voices. My apostle always talks about that. I remember him talking about, whenever somebody has something in them that you need, you kind of lean in. You lean in. There's a magnetic effect, and so what have you. And so you have a tendency to lean in. Number 12, you register for every deliverance conference, or I would say deliverance conferences from the people that you follow. You typically know when there's a deliverance conference coming to your area, or people are going to call you, they're going to text you, they'll send you text messages, such and such is coming to your area, because you've talked about the people so much. You talked about, oh, you should check out this person. Oh, they, what have you. And they say, oh, he's coming to your area. So you'll get a text message or what have you. But you register for every deliverance conference in your area. You're going to be there. You're going to make it a point to be there. And let me say this before I move on. Deliverance ministers, I've learned, typically have a very high degree of humility, but it's a weird thing for me because while I've seen a high degree of humility, it's not to say deliverance ministers can't be prideful. They typically have a high degree of humility because many times you will find that deliverance ministers are not afraid to jump in and get free. They're not afraid. So I've learned, one of the things I've noticed is that people, and first and foremost, let me say this: every believer is supposed to do deliverance. That's biblical. The Bible says, and these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name, they will cast out devils. That's one of the things that is a sign that you believe. But when I say deliverance minister, I'm not saying that we're a special breed. I'm saying that people who are specifically designed, that they're wired for that. They're wired for spirituality or what have you. But when you're dealing with, I've learned that there's a degree of humility that I've noticed that most deliverance ministers have, whereas they're not afraid to go through deliverance in front of people. They're not afraid. They'll exemplify, they'll demonstrate it. And it's not to say if you happen to be a person that says, well, Tiffany, I probably prefer private deliverance. No, that's not to say that you're not called to deliverance. It is to say that the more you get deliverance, the more free you get, the less people bound you are, the less you care about what people are thinking around you. And I get it. I do understand that in many cases people have to be very mindful when they're in leadership, that because they don't want the sheep to see them a certain way and think that, oh, I've been taken from this person and this person was bound the whole time. Because reality is we all need deliverance at some point. We all need deliverance. One of the pastors in my church, who was very skilled in deliverance, he always says we need deliverance at least once a quarter. We need deliverance at least once a quarter. So we need regular bouts of deliverance. And that includes those of us who are in deliverance ministry. But I've noticed that there happens to be a degree of humility. But I say it's weird because deliverance ministers could have in some cases, not all cases, but you can see a level of confidence that can maybe look arrogant in cases. But if you talk to them, you get to know them, you realize that no, they're passionate about what they teach, but they are actually in many cases very humble, because you come to understand that, hey, I didn't do none of this, and God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. So in order for me to do deliverance, I need to make sure that I remain humble, because I don't want God to split my wig. At the same time, I don't want to end up getting bound because I'm over here playing with God. You register for every deliverance conference. Number 13, I'm going to skim through it because it was tied to another note. You have books on deliverance. You probably got pigs in the parlor. I think that's like the deliverance Bible. Like every deliverance minister has pigs in a parlor, even though it's a very thin book. But you typically are going to have books on deliverance. You're going to have books on deliverance. Number 4, you're unusually conscious about what you listen to, watch, or what you say. I think I said something like that before. You're unusually conscious about it. Whereas everybody be like somebody can have a conversation with, girl, she talking about she don't listen to secular music. I don't even know. And you could be looking at it like, well, that's just her consecration. That's her level of consecration. And it doesn't, I don't judge you for what you believe. Like if your level of consecration, if you feel comfortable listening to music that says be, ho, all that other stuff, that's between you and God. I don't judge you for that. But I don't want to be judged because I don't listen to it. It doesn't mean that I'm thinking I'm better. It doesn't mean that I'm prideful. It doesn't mean that I'm religious. It just means that that's my degree of sensitivity. That's what God has given me. A lot of times, hear me when I say your degree of consecration is tied to your degree of sensitivity. Your degree of sensitivity. And I remember when the Lord bought me out secular music, it had nothing. Let me tell you how you know God did it. Because when he bought me off, me and the Lord got into it, we were fighting. When he was trying to bring me out of secular music, I fought. I fought because I loved music, and I loved it. And I remember he kept telling me, I don't want you listening to this. I don't want you listening to this. And I was still kind of caught between the world and the church. And I just remember it was a fight. I remember what God did was he opened up my ears and he gave me a degree of sensitivity to it. So I just remember getting in my car one day and I remember the song I was listening to. It was sung by Total. I don't need no one else but you. And I remember I was singing along, and then as I'm singing along, I would stop and rebuke it. I was like, "Oh, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus." Oh, what have you? I was relatively a babe in Christ. Well, I was a babe in Christ. Nevertheless, God was starting to wean me. God was starting to wean me off that. So again, if that's not your level of consecration, never judge people for their level of consecration, because their level of consecration has everything to do with their degree or their level of sensitivity and what God has called them to do. And so you're unusually conscious about what you listen to, watch, and what you say. Can't believe I got to number 15. I was concerned that I was going to have to do a part 2. And we did this in 30 minutes. Well, almost 40 minutes. Number 15, you can be considered offensive to some people. Excuse me. You can be considered offensive. Now, I am not in any way saying that you're rude. I'm not in any way saying that you have a tendency to say rude things. This is what the Lord showed me when we were getting ready to have our conference at church and we were getting ready to have a mass deliverance session. And I was looking and I started noticing things. I started noticing, and it was a powerful deliverance session. It was amazing. I started noticing that people were manifesting, and God gave me a different degree or a different understanding of the word manifesting. He started showing me that people were manifesting days before the event. You saw some people who looked frustrated. And God said they're manifesting because hell was shaken up or what have you. But offense is a manifestation in most cases. It's fleshly, but it's also a manifestation. The Bible said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." And so, whenever you tell people the truth, it can be offensive, and you're not thinking about it because you didn't say it in a rude way. You didn't say anything rude. You just said the truth. I'll give you an example because I don't want to justify those of you who are rude and you think that I'm saying that you have a license to be rude. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you may say, somebody sit up there and say, "So girl, he came over last night, right?" And the first thing you say, "Well, you're not married to him. Why is he at your house? And why are you letting him over there at nighttime?" It's not the best thing for you to do. And I think immediately when it came to my family, my family told me, and I didn't understand it, but I remember God gave me what to say back because I had started going through my deliverance and, what have you. I was still a babe in Christ. And I remember my mom saying, it was my mom, my sister, we were standing outside and they were like, "You're controlling." And I'm thinking to myself, I've never liked controlling people. We obviously have a different definition of the word controlling. I said, "What do you mean by controlling?" And That's what God gave me to say, because I'm like, I've literally never tried to control y'all. What are you talking about? And my ex, I remember he was there and he was like, yeah, you're controlling. So it's three people saying it. So obviously there's something wrong. So I'm like, I'm standing there and I said, okay, give me examples. Give me examples. Tell me like literally things that I've done. And the examples they gave is, we tell you to do something, you don't do it. I said, that's not controlling. That's me having a voice. If you tell me that you, like if my sister said, hey, I want to use your computer, and I said no, she interpreted that as controlling. If I said no, I'm going to be working on my computer. And I had to come to understand that when you're talking to people, you have to ask them questions. And I had to come to understand, God started helping me to understand that many of us, when you've been brought up in a small community, you have very limited understanding. And so what you're going to do, you have very limited labels. And so what you're going to do is you're going to always take the labels that you had, so you mislabel people because you don't know how to label them. And I remember standing there and I would say, give me an example. I've never been accused of being that way. Like, give me an example. And the example was always, we tell you to do something and you don't do it. We tell you to do, like, if you don't agree, you basically gonna do your own. And I'm like, well, if I don't agree, I don't get mad at you for doing what you want to do. It's just that I don't agree with you or what have you. But what they were saying is, it's foreign to us to see somebody with their own voice. It's foreign to us to see somebody with their own voice. And I've come to understand that a lot of times, we have a tendency to muzzle each other. And that's one of the things you can find out with deliverance ministers. They will not allow you to walk close with them if you happen to be controlling in any degree. It's because you will put a muzzle. I think, for example, when it comes to me, I don't let everybody close if they have because most of the time you got a lot of people, inventory people always want to get close fast. They don't want to go through a process or what have you. They want to get close fast. But a lot of times the first thing they're going to do is muzzle you. So if you reach out to me and you say, Tiffany, my boyfriend, he came over there and we did this. Now you think I can't preach on fornication for the next 3 weeks or for the next month, or you're going to think I'm talking about you. So next thing I'm going to get a text message talking about I can't believe you're talking about me. I literally said nothing about you. I didn't talk. When I had the thought to have this message, I really didn't think about you at all. Like, this is just something that God laid on my heart. But I've come to understand that a lot of people have a spirit of control, or what have you, and they will try to muzzle you. They'll try to put a muzzle on you. But you can be considered relatively offensive when you're not offensive. You're probably one of those people, like, if somebody get offended with you, you have to go home and you're kind of scratching your head trying to figure out, like, we didn't argue, I didn't say anything rude, what happened? So now you're kind of picking through everything. You're going back and rehearsing it in your head, like, I said, I don't understand what happened. And most of the times, when you talk to the people, they may say something along the lines of, I told you I wanted to go to McDonald's, and you said that you wanted to go to Burger King or what have you. And you're like, well, that's fine, but I said we can go to both restaurants, because this is how I am. Like, hey, you want McDonald's, I want Burger King. So we'll swing by Burger King, get your food, and you got upset. For them, that's offensive because they just feel like you should just agree. And like I said, I've discovered in America that a lot of people wrestle with the spirit of control. A lot of people wrestle with the spirit of control. They don't necessarily understand that it's okay for people to have that voice. And this is why I've had to, many of the people that have come, around me, I've had to tell them, sis, you can tell me no, because I automatically think about this young lady, and I've told the story before, when I said, hey, I'm going to Berlin, the coat factory, then I'm going to go out to get something to eat. Do you want to come? And she was like, and I said, sis, you can tell me no. And I'm not mad at you. I'm not going to punish you or what have you. And she admitted that she was just used to people punishing her. And I'm like, no, you can tell people no. And I said, listen, if you get around people that you cannot say no to, get away from them. Get away from them. I said, because that's a spirit. People should be able to give you the grace to say, hey, I don't want to go out to eat with you today. I don't feel like doing this today. People should give you the grace to do that. But again, number 15, you are considered offensive by some people, not every person. One of the things I noticed, for example, younger people can think that. Older people, I have the best relationships. I've always had the best relationships with older people. Always, always. Because there's a degree to maturity. There's a degree to maturity. But a lot of times, younger folks, y'all know I love you, right? You don't like the truth. You don't like the truth. I immediately think about this old friend of mine who called me, and she got mad at me for telling her the truth. She said, and she was like, I said, sis, I don't want to hear about your fornication. I don't want to hear about that. She was like, oh my gosh, you can't be so heavily minded that you're not any earthly good. Oh, what have you? And after she got through with that yelling, she said, so yeah. So when he came over, I said, again, I don't want to hear about it. Thank you, Sister Courtney. God bless you. I said, again, I don't want to hear about it. And she got mad. She got mad because in her mind, she felt like I should allow that conversation in my head. And I was like, I really don't want to talk about that. I don't want to hear about what y'all did. Y'all were wrong. Y'all were wrong. So I really don't want to hear about that. So people consider that offensive. And so that's what I wanted to make sure I gave clarity on offensive. I'm not saying that you walk around and you're rude to people and you need to get delivered. Just nasty. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that in casual conversation, people are not accustomed to people saying, hey, I don't want to hear you talk about your fornication. I'm not interested in that conversation. But and saying it in a nice way, sis, don't want to talk about that. Or saying, yeah, I don't think you just told me that this guy told you he just wants to be friends with you. He don't want anything more. But he pursued you like he was interested in you. He pursued you like he wanted a relationship with you. But now he took you on a date and all that. And now he's telling you that he's not looking for anything serious. Sis, cut him off. That's what I'm talking about. That can be relatively offensive. Sis, I think you should cut him off. It sounds like somebody that wants to play games. It sounds like somebody that doesn't care about you. And nowadays, I will say my generation, that was not considered offensive so much. Nowadays, millennials consider that offensive. Not all millennials. I'm not classifying you all. But I'm saying nowadays, the culture is tell people what they want to hear and not what they need to hear. Tell people what they want to hear and not what they need to hear. So if somebody brings a narcissist around you and you're supposed to just sit there and say, well, and she's like, girl, I met him like 3 months ago and everything. And you see he's abusive toward her. This generation has this thing where you're supposed to say, well, congratulations. I'm really happy for you. Congratulations. I'm really happy for you. But if you call to the ministry of deliverance, you're going to see that in a little bit deeper. You're going to see that a little bit deeper. And you may, depending on your relationship with the person, you may say, sis, you sure? You want to, okay, I think you should pretty much set up some therapy sessions and stuff like that. I don't, sis, okay, pray about it. That's all I'm asking you to do. Pray about it. So that's what I mean by offensive. I'm not saying that you be rude. I'm not saying that you walking around cutting people down. I'm saying that you are a chronic truth teller in a nice way, in a tactful way. You use sensitivity, but you find that a lot of people around you are not necessarily you find that a lot of people are not accustomed to that. They don't like the truth. So consequently, you will end up with a small circle because you're not into telling people what they want to hear. You're not into telling, yeah, girl, well, thank you, King Hightower. God bless you. You're not interested in telling the sister, well, I mean, I get it. He hit you across your head last week. He body slams you, but you know what? Just take him to church and take him to the altar and let him go through deliverance. And I think that should cast that demon out of him. And then he won't be violent anymore. No, you will tell her to get up and run. You'll be like, sis, that's a violent person. You can bring him to the altar all day long, but deliverance doesn't cast out bad character. It casts out the demon. But the demon came as a result of the bad character, not the other way around. So those are the 15 signs. This is probably the fastest video I've ever done. Those are the 15 signs that you are called to the ministry of deliverance. With that being said, I'm going to get ready to close. But before I close, I want to ask you a question. How many of you believe, just by show of hands, that you're called to the ministry of deliverance? Just by show of hands. How many of you believe that you're called to the ministry of deliverance? How many of you believe that you're called? Just based on what I've shared or based on your own encounters and experiences, how many of you believe that you're called to the ministry of deliverance? Right now, we have 422 people live on YouTube that are tuned in. Okay, I see your hands. I see your hands. I see your hands. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I see your hands. Okay, here's my challenge to you. Here's my challenge to you. Make sure you're doing something about it. Because when you're called to the ministry of deliverance, first and foremost, you can't be fearful. Secondly, you cannot delay the call on your life. Because I'm going to tell you from me, and this is probably one of the signs God tosses you into the ring with demons. My whole life, I've been tossed into the ring with demons. My whole life, I've been tossed. I can tell you story behind story behind story behind story. I am an avid storyteller. I think a lot of people who are called to ministry of deliverance, we have a lot of stories. We were tossed, or many times we were raised by the demons that we were called to cast out. This is how we start to build on our discernment. We were thrown into the ring. And I hear women saying, for example, every time I get with a guy, and if he's not the right one, God drives him out of my life. People who are called to the ministry of deliverance usually don't have that testimony. God will let us walk down the aisle with that joker. He will let us walk down because God, now he'll give you a way of escape. He will warn you, or what have you. If you don't take the warning, he will allow you to go ahead and take your tail right on down that aisle and marry that dude, and you will come to understand demons a little bit deeper while you're in that marriage, because you will see the manifestation. You will start to learn, whenever he's crazy, whenever that demon is woke, his eyes get dark. Some of you know what I'm talking about. His eyes get dark. He goes to move in a certain way. People who are called to the ministry of deliverance are pattern. They learn patterns in people. They learn patterns. God will allow you, right? He will allow you to go down that road. Thank you, Solutions with Sydney. God bless you. Definitely, definitely. But he will allow you in many cases. I'm not trying to put God in a box, because I'm saying, many cases, he would allow you to go down that path, just so that you can do what you feel you can get the lesson in it. He let me go down that path twice because I was a hard-headed child that was running from my calling. I didn't want to do what God called me to do. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to have a normal life. And I've been in a ring so many times until I got to the point where I was like, you know what? It's either die or surrender. Amen, Sister Elizabeth. But it's either die or surrender. So I want to challenge you guys. Surrender. I want to challenge you guys. Go ahead and make the necessary steps. If you're not in a church home, get in a good church home. Pray and ask the Lord to lead you. Make sure that you start following people who are in the ministry of deliverance. Make sure you start following them avidly. People who are called, people who are deliverance ministers. You want to learn. We have nowadays people who are called. Apostle Ivory Hopkins, I think he's on here. Apostle Ivory Hopkins is powerful. I tell you all the time, book deliverance sessions with him. You need deliverance. Go get some deliverance with Apostle Ivory Hopkins. The moderators are posting his information. But go get deliverance, but get his books. Apostle Alexander Pagani, Apostle John Eckhart, Apostle Kimberly Daniels, John Ramirez. They're called to the ministry of deliverance. You're going to learn Apostle Brian Meadows. You're going to learn who is in the ministry of deliverance, but get their books. Make sure you get the education, because you're going to get the education one way or another. Let me say that before I go, and I'm about to leave on here. You're going to get the information one way or another. Either you're going to get it through you getting cast into the ring with that stuff, or you're going to get yourself under a minister and learn and glean. Stop trying to take the lazy way out, because the lazy way is the long way. The lazy way is the long way. The long way is the wrong way, but the wrong way, God can turn it into the right way, because either way, that revelation going to come to you. If you got to get into the fight with Jezebel, if you got to get into a fight with all those different demons the way that I did, and you got to learn the hard way, then guess what? That's your route. That's your choice. But your best out is to make sure that you get the revelation. Go ahead and start gleaning, going to some deliverance conferences, getting the revelation, because the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. You are needed. You are needed. You can't keep living for you. You can't keep making your will an idol. You can't keep placing your will over God's will. And you're going to keep dealing with, just to say this, if you're called to deliverance, you're going to keep dealing with Jezebel until you surrender. In most cases, I'm not speaking that over your life. I'm just saying Jezebel knows who you are, even when you don't know who you are. The kingdom of darkness is going to know who you are, even when you don't know who you are. So even though you decide to run, even though you decide not to surrender, you will find yourself in relationships and dealing with people constantly. And at some point, it will make you go and say, I need to find out why this is happening to me. Why this is happening. Why is this happening in my life? I need somebody to give me an explanation. All right. I love you guys. I'm about to go. Sister Stacy, I see you on here. I'm waiting on you now. I'm about to go. I love y'all, and I will talk to you soon. Make sure that you like and share this message. Can't believe this is under an hour, but it's good. I love you guys. Bye-bye.